Hello, it is the 1st of January 2017 and this is another video to wish you all a happy new year. I hope that wherever you are you're having a wonderful time. It's 12:30 right now and I've done all of my checking in on people and wishing happy new year to people. So I'd like to do another video. I haven't really done any over the past couple of weeks because I've taken a holiday time, time to just relax. Honestly, I've just needed to relax. So this is hopefully not going to take too long, hopefully not as long as an hour as my last video was, but I just wanted to reflect on 2016, talk a little bit about some of the highlights of my year. I know 2016 has been a very difficult year for many people and a year of change for a lot of others. It certainly has seen the world change and shift in different ways than we were used to. But it hasn't been all bad. You know, I don't think a full year can be so horrible that it doesn't contain something that was powerful for ourselves. So I've come up with a list of, I think, 9 different huge things that happened to me this year, and things that I'm really thankful for, things that really I'm really feeling blessed about. So I want to go through this list, and then I think I will start to drink because my glass is empty right now. So to start off the list of things that made 2016 really excellent for me, number 1, and this is in no order, this is in just off the top of my head. Number 1 would be renting a space at Mythwood Campground. Mythwood is a private retreat campground about half an hour away from where I live. I had no idea about it a few years ago, didn't even know it was there, and then in 2015 I went there when I was LARPing actually, and I was there very briefly. I think I was there for about 3 hours to sell some products through my business, and I didn't really get a chance to go back until August, when I was just by chance ended up going with a friend and having a private tour with the 2 operators, Cayman and Alex, and I decided then it was an amazing place, but I didn't really know how to connect with it because, you know, apart from going to events there, you know, what would I do, right? But I went to my first big pagan festival there. Kept up with that community, and in I think May, I think Fallon and Rebecca could probably tell me when this was, but in May I was invited to go and work over there for a week to help set up the place for the season, and I went and I spent a lot of time on the ground, working with some really beautiful people, and I just fell in love with it, and I made the decision a few months later, I think it was in June or July. I made the decision to approach Cayman, who is the owner, or one of the owners, and ask him if there might be a position, a campground, a campsite available to rent, and he said yes, which I was quite shocked and also very pleased about, because he doesn't have that many to give out, and he's very choosy with who he gives them out to. So I was very, very honored to be given that opportunity. So I took a campsite, rented it from him, and within a few months I had bought my parents' trailer, which was out the back, and got that set up there, and suddenly I had a place I could go to on weekends. So it was like, wow, you know. So that's been very special for me. That's been a huge thing for me. It certainly has been a pricey thing for me because the trailer didn't come cheap, but it's manageable, and it's something that has enriched my life, having a place I can go over to, and plus I'm surrounded by really amazing people. I get on with all my neighbours and all the people who are there. There's about, I think, 35 of us or 40 of us. We're all part of the same, you know, spiritual group. We all go to the same festivals, and every single one of them I've learned something from, which is very powerful. Plus they're just amazing. I mean, we've had so many times of just sitting around the campfire, drinking, telling stories. There's been a lot of laughter. I think that's my biggest memory from it all is the laughter, you know, the community coming together, and some very interesting drunken tales too. So that's been quite cool. So that's number one. Number two would be applying to school. So I'm in the process of applying to psychotherapy school. It's a master's level program. I've spoken about this before in other videos. And coming up to deciding to actually do that. I've been doing the classes all year, the introductory classes all year, starting last September, but it was really only in the past 3 months that I got this vision of that I could make this part of my life. And so I applied, and then suddenly it was all happening. And so I'm still in the process of applying. There's still some paperwork I need to do, but that's huge. That is really huge, considering that a few years ago I was feeling such a failure for not having finished university, to suddenly being a place where the university, all of the work I did with that, can be applied to this program, and then I could, stand a good chance to actually getting in. Is really, it's an amazing feeling to have. Number three. Yes. So number three, I have it listed down on my screen here, so I don't forget. In January or February, I attended the winter retreat, or the winter festival for my spiritual group, Tribal Hearth. And after that, it was based on land out towards Barry, and I got this idea of organizing an event very similar to it. Not the same, but very similar to it. Now, what I realized is that I was in a very naive place back then, but the process of planning it was very powerful. So I approached a friend of mine who was down in Colorado, and I don't really speak to him much anymore, but at the time we were speaking on a very regular basis, and he practices a very different energy tradition, very new age, but it's a very different energy tradition from Reiki, but similar in some ways to Reiki. And I suggested to him, well, I was telling him about what I just experienced, this festival, gathering. It's not a festival, it's a gathering. And he happened to just say, off the cuff, oh, well, if you're interested in doing something like that, I could do something like that for you, and I could come up. And I think he meant it very non-seriously. I don't think he really seriously meant it. He just, he just wanted to say it. But the idea really stuck with me, and within a few days, I got a very good sense of how to put it together. So I approached a couple of other people I know, somebody who does acupuncture and qigong, somebody who does ho'oponopono and Hawaiian lapa'au, and a couple of other people connected with them, and we put this retreat together, and we called it, I called it Slange, which is an Irish and Scottish Gaelic word meaning good health. So the whole idea of this retreat was it was going to be a 3 to 4 day retreat for about 40 people. The facilities was going to cost us about $2,000, $3,000, and one of the parts of it would, all of us who were putting it together would also come away from it with money. So being the main organizer of that, and going through the process of creating the scheduling, having brainstorming sessions about what the flow of the weekend would be, approaching people to take part in it, being the logistical end, so liaising with the site, the campground that had the facilities, and also dealing with all the money and setting all that up. It was a very powerful and insightful process to go through, and even now, I can't even think of why I wanted to do it in the first place. And I think that was also partly why it ultimately didn't go through. When we did it, and we put it out there and we started advertising for it, we got interest, but nobody was buying tickets. And I think in the end we only had one person who bought a ticket. And there were various issues, and I take ownership for some of the issues of that. But it was also lack of experience on my part. But that being said, going through the experience of having, you know, gone through and planning something like that, even if it didn't go through, was very insightful, and it was a high point. I mean, you know, if 2 years ago you had told me, oh well, you know, in a couple of years' time you'll feel comfortable enough to actually go and try and put together an event like that, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have think you were mad, you know. So that was quite a powerful experience for me. Number 4 would be gaining a whole new community. Yeah, this goes back to Mythwood Campground and Tribal Hearth. Last year, when I attended the very first pagan festival, which is Hearthfire, put on by Tribal Hearth, I just went as a seller, and I didn't really know anybody in the community. The only person I knew who went to that event was Cayman and Alex, and that was only because I'd met them 2 weeks before. So I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody going in. And so I set up my little tent, and I was next door to somebody who I knew years and years and years ago, a woman who owns a shop in a nearby town. But I didn't really know Liz very well. So over the next couple of months after that, I got to know many of the people who attend those festivals, and it is a very tight little community. And I found some people who were, well, most of them actually, really resonated with me, really were on the same page as me, and people who, they do things very differently. They own their lives, is what I've learned. They own their spirituality, they own their lives, they own all of their experiences. They're very mature people, but there's such a playfulness to a lot of them too. So it was lovely, and a lot of those people are actually connected with the campground that Tribal Hearth does their events through, and rent sites at Mythwood. So being then part of the Mythwood community, oh excuse me, being part of the Mythwood community, and being surrounded by these people and interacting with them on a regular basis, I gained some very solid friends very, very quickly, which is not like me. I'm normally the type of person where it takes a long time for me to develop friendships, and well, I'm learning that I'm not that person anymore, you know, if it's the right kind of person. So gaining that community was very powerful for me because it added so much more to my life. Beforehand, I didn't have, especially after school, I didn't have a sense of community because I don't fit in Hanover, Ontario. But having that, and having that half an hour away from me, it's incredible. It's an amazing part of 2016, and that really started for me in when Northern Lights Gathering, which is the very first winter festival I went to. Or gathering, I keep saying festival, it's a gathering. It was very intimate. There's only about 50 people, and a lot of the people from the Mythwood group end up going to that. I mean, it's our event, right? So at that very intimate setting, being snowed in, being inside with these 50 people for 4 days, I got to know them on a much deeper level, and then it just springboarded from that. So it was lovely. So that has been a huge part of 2016 for me. On a very different note, number 5 is gaining closure, and this has also been a huge part of 2016 for me. My last video talks a lot more about it, so I'm not going to talk more about it here. But at the end of 2016, I could really start to put the pieces together, and I think it shows how far I've come from when I left university to where I am now, because there were so many loose ends from back then, regrets, people who I didn't get closure with, and it's always stuck in the back of my head. Always, those people have always lived inside my mind in those little corners as little ghosts, and to be able to let them go and to be able to get closure has been an incredible experience. And in fact, in between the last video I did and this video, I've actually took a huge step, and I approached somebody who I hurt, and well, he hurt me, but I mostly hurt him, back when I was leaving university. And this person was somebody who I absolutely loved. You know, I'm not going to mince words. He was the love of my life. It was unrequited love, but he was the love of my life. And I didn't get a chance to really sort things out with him because we ended on such bad terms. And so I looked him up on Facebook, and I was still riding the wave of that feeling of closure that I had with so many other people this year. And so I looked him up on Facebook, and I found him, and I almost didn't message him because I thought, well, it's been 4 years. We're probably not going to have anything to say, and really, do I have the right to say anything to him? But I did. I messaged him, and I apologized, and he responded. And just in that moment of response, and we talked over that day, a lot of things were cleared up for me, and I was able to gain the closure that I needed with him. I'm not sure that we can ever be friends again. And I know that we can never go back to where we were before we lost contact. But he was probably the biggest regret in my life. What the circumstances around that, and being able to reach out and for us both to heal was a huge part of the end of 2016, and I'm really thankful for that. A lot of it's still sinking in, and I don't really know what's going to happen next around that, but that's been powerful. So the closure, the being able to tie loose ends, has been a huge highlight of 2016. It's been painful at times, and it's forced me to really dredge up a lot of things from my past that I didn't want to look at. But I think it says, at least it says to me, how far I've come to be able to even feel comfortable in going into those conversations. So that's been powerful. Number 6 is I have developing and owning my spirituality, which I put down because it's a constant thing. I think when I'm on a few big pagan groups on Facebook, and I often see people who are just newly coming into these beliefs, to saying that they feel so welcome, they feel so good, they feel like they've come home, and a lot of times I know that they're not owning their spirituality. They're running away from something else. And I think that's true of most of us. We're always running away from something. But when we come to a place of owning our spirituality, and again, it's that depth. I feel we're in a constant struggle all the time to get depth to our lives. And of course, the sad irony is that by the time I think a lot of us start to get it, we die, But this past year and starting in 2015, I started to come out from the little shell that I was in. I started to come out from under the rock I was under and connect with people. And I was very fortunate to be connecting with the right people. And these are people who, they own their spirituality, they own their lives. And I've started to see how their example has changed me. I do own my spirituality now. I do own the way that I see the world, and I think there's a depth to who I am now and how I practice now that wasn't there even 3 years ago. Definitely having a space that is sacred ground to go to on a regular basis has been very powerful. I've had some interesting experiences through that place, but I also think it's just me. I think turning 30 and now having lived 30 years, it's given me a perspective that I wouldn't have had when I was 20. And you know, I've spoken about this in other videos, so I don't need to talk more about it. But I think that's a huge highlight of the year. And I see a difference. I see a difference in myself between January 2016 and January 2017. I feel that difference. And many people have commented on, even people who have just known me for a year and a half, you know. So number 7 is starting these videos, which was a surprise for me. I was talking to a few friends of mine about these videos, and I've been posting them on my Facebook wall. In fact, chances are I'm going to be posting this one on my Facebook wall. But what I found surprising was when I started them a few weeks ago, when I was sick especially, I found surprising how I reacted to them. Because I sat down and I watched the videos over again, looking at myself, watching myself, and I actually learned how much I love myself. You know, I looked at myself speaking on the screen, and a lot of people, it's very natural when you're not used to seeing yourself on you know, in that way, hearing your voice, because obviously we all hear our voices differently in our heads. It's very natural to be revulsed by it, not to be not to see yourself in it, right? But I think, you know, that the turning point is when you can look at yourself and be comfortable with yourself. And I am, you know. Years ago, I wasn't comfortable with how I looked, how I sounded. I hated my voice whenever I heard it because it just sounded so weird. But then there were also other issues around that. There was certainly a lot of self-hatred and self-loathing. And being able to look at myself speak and only see or only think positive criticism of you know, oh, I want to change how I say this, or I need to really watch myself and how I pronounce things, or I should stop doing this, you know, twiddling around. I think that's been a very wide eye-opener for me, and it's been a highlight of 2016, and I hope that I can continue doing these on a regular basis. I'm not going to promise that I am, because if I promise I am and I don't, I'll feel like a failure, and I don't want to I don't want to do that to myself. But I hope that I can create a bank of videos to look back on, so I can at least see how far I've come. So that leads us to number 8, which is taking new classes. So all year, in September 2015, I started taking the classes at the Hive and Grove down in Kitchener, and that was part of just development for myself. I had that feeling that I needed to do them, and then over the months, I've taken more classes. I took a sound healing course, but that was all part of the schooling, the possibility that I might one day apply. But in September, I decided to take a tarot class with Tiffany, and it was an eye-opener as well, because, you know, I've been using tarot cards for about 15 years, since I was a teenager, and I thought that I knew the tarot. I thought that I knew everything about it, and that I didn't need to learn anything new, and the only reason I was going to take the class was just to spend time with Tiffany and some of the other ladies and gentlemen who attend those classes. And, well, just have fun. Also, she gave me a 50% off discount, which was always a good thing. But when I sat in the class for the first time, and it was only an 8-week class, like it was 8 weeks, 2 hours each night, that was it, once a week. So it really wasn't a huge class. But sitting in that class and learning tarot from a different perspective, especially learning the Rider-Waite, and I think I spoke about this in my first video, it was an eye-opener, and it was very humbling, because suddenly I knew that I didn't know the tarot at all, and so it's awakened a huge curiosity for me. In fact, let me see if I can find them here somewhere. Something I did today was I went out to Walmart to get a load of pictures developed, and what the people at Walmart thought when I was developing these pictures, I don't know. But Tiffany was the other day telling me about a manuscript that she's been reading in facsimile, called The Prophecies of Paracelsus. And Paracelsus was a 14th century occultist. He was huge into the Kabbalah, and he's one of the main sources of alchemy, and also many of the books of the occult. These engravings in his book are simply incredible, and when you actually start to look at them, you start to get a sense that this is one of the origins or the inspirations of the Rider-Waite Tarot. I don't know if you can actually see these, but for example, here we go. So if you see here, so this scene has a king sitting with a cockerel and what looks to be a bear, and just above you see a hand emerging from a cloud with a sword, which is very reminiscent of some of the what do you call them, the ace cards in the suites of the Rider-Waite Tarot. So I probably wouldn't have known about these, or at least would have read about them, but would have filed them away as just look at them later on in my mind, if I hadn't taken those classes. And so it's been quite humbling and quite educational, and it has made me feel quite interested in learning more about the tarot on a deeper level. It's about that depth. I think 2016, that's the word, depth. It hasn't been a tragic year. For other people it has been. For me, it's been about gaining depth, digging deeper. So that's been quite cool. So taking new classes, I'm currently in one where we're looking at the inner personalities, looking at the shadow self. A lot of shadow work in these classes, which makes a lot of sense because they are preparation for psychotherapy. So I think that depth is really about looking into a shadow and seeing how far down and how deep we actually are as human beings. Number 9, which is, I could go on and on and on about this, would be reconnecting with my Welsh roots. And I think I've spoken in a previous video about the traditions that I follow, mostly Hinduism and Buddhism, and how they connect with neo-paganism. But one area that I didn't really connect with until until the past year and a half has been my Welsh heritage. Now, I have to admit, it's a little bit of a secret, but I have to admit it. My parents are actually English. They were born in Lancashire and Yorkshire. I was born in Wales, so although I'm not ethnically Welsh, I do have Welsh ancestry through several grandmothers. So my sense of the UK and of Britain is very, very different than some North Americans would see it. Because I know and have done a lot of genealogical research, I know that in me I have Scottish, Irish, Welsh, English, of course, some Cornish, probably not Native American. I don't think I have any Native American in me. I might many years ago, but I'm pretty sure I don't. But essentially, I have all of those different aspects in my very recent heritage, like within 2 generations, 3 generations. So the Welsh heritage has been quite interesting for me because I connect very strongly with that place because I was born there. And when in 2010 I had the chance to actually spend a month, I was staying with my sister. I was working over there for a few months, and then the last month I had the chance to actually stay in the UK and go and stay with my sister, who lives in a place called Harden, which is just straddling the border between England and Wales. And to go into Wales and spend a lot of time, just just by myself sometimes, just roaming around, taking photos, looking at stones and things like that. But what I didn't realize was how interesting the culture is. And over the years, I've always looked to the UK as being home because I didn't really feel connected with Canada much. But when I started to actually research the folklore, when I started to research like the Mabinogi, started looking at the culture as it is now, I was absolutely enthralled. And especially having been born there, I felt it was very important for me to look into those roots. So it's been quite interesting for me to study all of those, well, I mean, folklore I've always been interested in, but to really start to study and look at the cultural aspects of the folklore, as well as the folklore that exists in other parts of the UK, has been very powerful for me, and I'm intrigued with developing a better sense of that and incorporating it into my practice. With Hinduism, because I'm not Indian, and because I wasn't born to a Hindu family, there's always things that I'm going to miss out on. There's always things that I'm not going to fully understand. There's always things that I can't claim because that's a cultural element. Whereas with the Welsh and the Celtic, I can claim it all because it is part of my heritage. It's part of my ancestry. Not to say that those things can only be claimed by people with that ancestry. I think a lot of people around the world benefit from looking at other cultures. I know I certainly have benefited from involving myself in and practicing Hinduism. But I think that there's a very different special relationship with a place if you're born there, if you're connected to that place by birth. Which I think is, at least for me, is a very powerful thing. It's that sense of identity, So how I've been doing that is, again, by looking through the folklore, connecting with the figures of the folklore, not just of the ancient folklore, of the Celtic folklore, but also of the medieval and the Christian folklore, which has been quite powerful as well, because so much has filtered through, so much has come in, and there's a huge reservoir of knowledge as part of that too. So that's been a huge highlight of 2016 as well. It's been reconnecting with that from a distance. And it's funny, when I started to reconnect with it, and at some of the festivals that I've been going to this year, I took a moment to, as much as I could, connect with people who have different traditions, experiences, and I started to see that so many people are connected with the Welsh specifically. It's the weirdest thing. It's only a tiny little country right on the edge of Great Britain, and a lot of people have never even heard of it. They might have seen it in travel documents, or they might have heard of it in passing, but they've never actually looked at the country. It would be like if North Americans would say Newfoundland. Well, Newfoundland, we know where Newfoundland is, but has anyone ever gone to it? Well, probably not. Many people. So it's been incredible to connect with other people, especially around the festival community, who really love Wales as well, and that's been a great connector. Which leads us to number 10, which is going to festivals. So last year I started by going to Herfire, which was as I said, my first ever pagan festival. I'd been to some pagan pride days a few years before, but I hadn't really connected with it. I would have classed myself as a solitary. And then suddenly to go, and I made the decision specifically, mostly because I love the people that were there, and they really recommended that I come. But so I went to Wiccanfest, I went to Four Winds Festival, I went to Herfire. There was another that I was planning on going to, but I ended up not going to. And then there was a couple of pagan pride days that I went to, and I made the decision as an introduction for myself to those communities, and also as a way to give back, because every single time I went to a festival, I was always welcomed. I was always made to feel like I was part of a family, which is an amazing experience when you really start to feel like you're part of a community, right? So I decided to actually contribute by offering workshops, by offering rituals, and I really connected with a lot of people through that. Mind you, as I said, it helps that I've drank with a lot of these people too, so it's that's been quite special. But I realized that if 2015 was my year of beginnings, 2016 was my year of introductions, because I was introduced to so many of the leaders of the pagan community. I was introduced to so many people who had been practicing for like 30, 40, 50 years in some cases, and they all accepted me, and they all made me feel like I was welcome. And I can't even describe what that feels like, you know. I cannot even describe what that feels like. To go from, again, having very little life and feeling like I was a failure, to suddenly going and being embraced by a community. And in tribal Herf, we often talk about sense of tribe. Tribe is a huge symbol of our spiritual group, and I really do feel it. But what I came to realize, I was thinking about this the other day, what I came to realize is that the idea of tribe isn't a continuous group. The idea of tribe is a feeling that wherever you are, you can surround yourself with like-minded people. And, you know, even if I go to the other side of the world, if I go back to the UK, whatever, that feeling of tribe is going to continue within me, and I will carry that on by, you know, gathering people who are like-minded together. So that has been 2016 for me. There's a huge number of tragedies that happened this year, certainly with the US political situation and the election of Donald Trump, that has changed a lot of people's perspectives, has shaken up a lot of people's worldviews. But, you know, as some of the people who I highly respect have been saying, you know, 2016 we can't just see as the year that shouldn't be called, which shouldn't be named, it shouldn't be mentioned again. You know, 2016 as a year has been pretty good to me. You know, I've changed as a person, I've grown as a person, I've gained so much, and I can only hope that I can give back as much as I've gained. A lot of loose ends were tied up for me, and, well, I don't think that I would be here sitting doing a video to post to, you know, out to the universe if I wasn't in a good place right now. So yeah, 2016, ups and downs, but generally because of these 10 things, it's been pretty powerful. So let me grab my glass here, and my Bailey's, which is, I don't know if it's a product placement. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I will pretend, just so that nobody flags my video. But a libation. Thank you, 2016, for all of you who've done, and I hope for a 2017 that is going to be warm and bright, filled with blessings. I look forward to challenges, and I look forward to many shadow work opportunities. But in the meantime, have a good nap, and welcome to 2017. And this is always the awkward time, isn't it? Like trying to turn the video off. Okay, I'm turning it off. Goodbye.